Hi, I'm Charles Elliott. I'm a lawyer here in Alexandria, Louisiana. And Kathleen's been taking a class on media, and she's encouraged me to start to share some of my thoughts with people out in the world. And this is our first attempt to do that. So hopefully it'll work out. It started with a conversation after the President's State of the Union speech the other night. And the implication of some of the things he said was that Republicans and their platform are opposed to in vitro fertilization, what we used to call test tube babies if you're as old as me. Um, and I had no idea that there was such a thing. And so I did some research and I wanted to share what I found with you and encourage you to all do your own research and find out about things. When you hear something that sounds like it's just not right, go do it. If it involves a legal case, go actually do some research and read the case because it's sort of gotten out of hand, and there's this perception that Republicans are opposed to people having babies through in vitro fertilization, and I just don't think that's true. The point of the conversation started with a recent decision from the Alabama Supreme Court based on an Alabama law, and the Alabama law is called the Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, and it's been on the books for a long time. And the point of it was, if a child is injured in some through some negligent act, that there's the possibility of getting punitive damages. But it had never been applied to an embryo that was still in the freezer and not yet implanted in the uterus. And so the question in the case was, does this law apply to all fertilized eggs, or is it just to the ones that have been implanted and are in the uterus growing toward being a baby? And the Alabama Supreme Court, which apparently the majority are Republicans, determined that these parents could pursue a claim. So let me back up a little bit and talk to you about the actual case itself. And most of this information I got from a really good uh, web page, which is on the website of Johns Hopkins Hospital. The plaintiffs were couples who had all fertilized eggs and had them frozen cryogenically in liquid nitrogen um, in order to hopefully have those embryos implanted, some of them, and to have children. And the three plaintiffs were couples who had all successfully had embryos implanted. But when they do this procedure, they usually fertilize more eggs than are likely to be necessary or that may be necessary, because sometimes the eggs don't take, and sometimes people's lives change and they decide make different decisions later on about having children. So these parents had all successfully had embryos implanted, but they had some leftovers that were still in the freezer at a hospital, in a clinic in the hospital. And for reasons unknown to me, um, and it's an odd set of facts, a patient at the hospital went into the lab, opened up the container where these frozen embryos were, stuck his hand in there, and pulled out a handful of embryos. Well, if you stick your hand in liquid nitrogen, most sane people know that's not going to end well. Um, it injured him, and he dropped the embryos, and they were destroyed. So the parents filed suit against the hospital and the clinic, seeking damages and punitive damages under this Alabama law. So, one of the most important things for you to know is that this is a specific Alabama statute which had been on the books for a long time, and it's the Alabama Supreme Court which ruled on an existing Alabama statute. So, it doesn't affect anyone else in the United States. That's the most important thing. um, so, the people got all up in arms. The clinics around the state halted all in vitro procedures because they didn't want to be subject to punitive damages and damages for whatever happened to the extra embryos. Similarly, the parents were upset because some of them had planned procedures that were suddenly halted because of the uncertainty of the law. Within a matter of a couple of weeks, the Alabama legislature met, passed a law that would protect parents and would protect um, clinics such as this from this kind of immunity, this liability. And the governor has signed that into law, and so it's not an issue anymore. But people on the fringe on both sides grabbed onto this issue and somehow tried to turn it into a national issue and somehow tried to make it part of a Republican platform that Republicans are against in vitro fertilization. Um, it's only marginally, tangentially related to the abortion issue, but it's a specific law that was only in Alabama, that only applied in Alabama, and no longer exists in Alabama. So this rush to blame Republicans and cast them as being against people having children is ridiculous. And mentioning the abortion thing, um, the Supreme Court recently ruled that there is no federal constitutional right to an abortion. And under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, if there's a power that the federal government doesn't have, that hasn't been specifically assigned to the federal government, then the power belongs to the states. And so, in a relatively short period of time, the issue of abortion became a state issue. So, if you have feelings about that issue, one way or the other, you're able to address your local legislature, governor, which gives the states more control over the issue. And if you don't like what happens in one state, you're able to move to another state. So I really upset me that there was a court opinion that was completely taken out of context and completely blown up and completely um, marginalizing Republicans as if they don't like children and they don't like people to have children. And so I would encourage all of you to research, to read cases, to understand what's going on, and not just take little snippets out of what you read in a headline, and understand what's really going on. So I'm hopefully going to, in the future, do more of these videos. If you like them, if you don't like them, let me know, and we'll see if we can't figure out what's going on in the world. Thank you.